Greetings, everyone. Welcome to Extra Hours, part of the Office Hours.global network. Find out more, officehours.global/join. We'll send you an email and you'll find out all the links to be able to hang out with us. So here we are. There's a few of us gathered tonight to take some questions like we normally do each day, but we might have some extra time to be able to talk about them. And then there's always an opportunity to look at some different topics that the panelists may be interested in talking about as well. So to introduce the panel, to complete the four of us that we have here tonight, Alexander Knight up in Canada. How are you, sir?
Doing very well, Grant. Good to be here. Thank you.
Nice to have you here. It's always a pleasure having you come in and be able to read questions for us as well. Sometimes Guy does this. Now, Guy has been pulled away for some weeks now, and someone to blame for that is 1F Jeff Keithley. Jeff, you pulled Guy into an event over there, a bit of tennis, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, we did some tennis together down at Delray Beach, Florida. Had a great time. And he was really a great asset to have on site, and was much appreciative of the nice weather we had versus where he was at home. He was dreading going back home so much that I rebooked him to go down to San Diego instead. So he was able to get out of there twice in 3 weeks straight. So yeah.
Nice. So you did Florida, then San Diego?
Well, I wasn't doing him. He had family in San Diego, so I had him returning back to Seattle, and he's like, "Hey, I've really been enjoying this weather. Is there any chance we can make a change on that?" I said, "God, for you, absolutely." He really busted his butt out there, and he ran handheld for us. So that's an extra special kind of job for what we do in tennis. It's running like on the court. Yeah, he's on the court in the middle of it, getting hollered at by the judge, getting hollered out by the players. Yeah, getting hollered at by the director. He had some thick skin by the end of the week.
Nice. There was a little season there where and maybe it was just one of the tennis contracts I thought that you weren't doing anymore, but you've picked it all. You've picked it up again.
This was a tennis. Well, we had a separate contract we were doing a lot of gaming. So we're doing over 40 tournaments a year in the gaming world. So for those that don't know what gaming is in the US, it's betting. So overseas, it's really big. Here, not so much, but there's content here, and so that's what we were doing, was sending all these productions and all these different tournaments. We're sending them out overseas, and then they were distributed out overseas further, worldwide for that matter. One of the biggest betting areas or gaming areas is Europe, especially Eastern Bloc Europe, and then the next is Asia, is really big. So we got away from that. We discontinued that contract, but then we've had a TV contract. So this was actual straight up TV to the world feed for ATP. And we had that. This was our last event off of that contract. And so we're renegotiating for that one now too. 3 more years, maybe. We'll see.
Yeah. And so you're keeping busy enough. The year has kicked off.
Right after that, I had a friend call me in a crunch, and we were in Florida already. He knew that I was already in Florida, and he picked us up to do some racing. And so my son and I helped engineer a new build out that we sold him some cameras and other gear, and we built out his truck and retrofitted it with some CCUs and SMPTE chains, and then we're working on audio now too. So we've got a lot of stuff going on, but it was vintage racing, which was really cool. I have to say. So you see like these just Lotuses that you're like, oh my God, this should be in a museum. This guy's running it around the track at 120 miles an hour. What are you doing? Wire wheel kind of vintage stuff. I mean, it was really cool, but that was like one section, and the other was just good old fashioned big V8s just roaring around the track. And then my favorite, of course, was Porsche's. And we had a nice series of the Cup series that was like, just good overzealous guys with plenty of money to blow, and that's kind of what it was. It was just a lot of fun. Yeah.
You didn't get your Model X out there on the track just to have some fun.
Not officially.
Okay.
What happens at night stays at night. Once you figure out how to turn all the lights off, you can do a lot of fun stuff.
That's right. You couldn't hear anything, so it was fine.
Exactly. Oh, just a bunch of tires squealing. That was it. I don't know who that was. We had to go pick up the cameras. I mean, that was the shortest distance, so we did.
Yeah. Very nice. To complete the panel, we've got Carl Asmussen, who is in just down the hill from me in Adelaide, South Australia. Hello, Carl.
Good afternoon. We're going to have the Adelaide Motorsport Festival this weekend, Jeff. So this is our vintage. So 2 weekends from now will be the Australian Formula One Grand Prix. The weekend before that here in Adelaide, that'll be in Melbourne. The weekend before that we have here at the Adelaide Festival, which is they bring out vintage Formula One cars. The 767B Mazda Le Mans car, which is a very famous car. It's coming here for a second year in a row. I live like about 20-minute walk from the track. So and these cars don't have any mufflers. They're much louder than the modern racing cars. We've got NASCARs here. So pretty much every series around the world will bring like one or two of their cars to this, and usually vintage versions. So we've got like a 90s NASCAR, and I think a 2000s NASCAR as well. They've got to go around the track. So it's pretty exciting. It's a relatively cheap event, 2-day event, Saturday, Sunday. So the next few days, but yeah, so we're about to have our version of a classic car meet. Technically, there's no racing of these kind of classic cars. They're like, $10 million each. So they don't technically race them. They do put them on the track at the same time, but they do have racing series, but these racing series are not the really expensive vintage cars. They have a bit more of a cheaper, like maybe $500,000 car that goes around the track for racing.
Yeah. It's nuts. My son was going like, you guys know what that Lotus costs, right? It was leading the pack. It was flying by, but it was like, he goes, like, it's a $300,000 car. And that was not all the cheap. I mean, there were plenty of Porsches that were posted at a number of the Cup series too. But they had some of the classic ones too that were like the V8 version. It was a Trans Am series. So this goes way back in the early 80s and 90s when it started in the 80s. And the Trans Ams were huge V8s. Like some of them had just unfettered, whatever you could put in it, doesn't matter. And so that was really cool getting to hear those rumble around the track. And it was rumbling down. It was fun. A lot of fun.
So, Carl, is it part of the same thing as the Sydney, what are they called? There's another event happening, Race of Champions at Accor Stadium. Did you hear about that?
So the Race of Champions is a worldwide event. It's just coming to Australia this year. So Race of Champions is actually, they take usually like rally cars, rally type cars. These cars are usually spec'd for this particular thing, and they go inside of a stadium. They build an asphalt track inside of a stadium, they can see Stadium Australia, whatever it's called now. That's the Olympic Stadium from the year 2000.
That's right.
And so they're putting down the asphalt. They put down protectors, put down the asphalt. It's pretty cool. They do one every year. I think COVID paused it for a little while. And essentially what it is, it's essentially like you can either consider it like a go-kart track on steroids with rally cars. As you can see there, it's more like the go-kart track, but it's much bigger than a go-kart track. But what it is they take world champions. So world champions from all motorsports, and their team too. They're usually teamed in nations. So you'll get 2 German world champions, and they make up the German team. They do have some relay events, and they just have some team events as well. But it's a lot of fun. So this is like the motorsport version of It's a Knockout. If anyone remembers It's a Knockout from the 80s, this is the motorsport version of that. It is a lot of fun. You can find clips of this on YouTube from all over the world where they do it. Michael Schumacher and Sebastian Vettel did it probably about 15 years ago, which is pretty cool. David Coulthard crashed in his, and his girlfriend was there just shaking her head as he crashed. So, but it's a lot of fun. It's really just a lot of fun. But the one that's coming up here in Adelaide, this is a motorsport festival here. So these are the type of cars that I'm talking about, and essentially they'll go around. They will do laps together. So these are Le Mans cars. We've got Australian touring cars. We have NASCAR's Formula One car there with a Jaguar, the Jaguar street car. There's a 767B. So this car very rarely comes out to play. It's a very famous car. But so this is last year, and they said after last year and the support they got last year, they're going to bring it back to Australia for this year. But this is it. This is only one of these in the world. So this is the only rotary engine car to win Le Mans. But yeah, so this is the event they do in Adelaide 1 week before the Melbourne Grand Prix. So, but yeah.
All right. Well, welcome to This Week in Racing. Apparently, I blame Jeff for bringing that up. But we've just gone around the world and to see what's happening in racing. Apparently. All right. So, Carl, I thought you were going to talk about SpaceX. Or what are you going to talk about? You can pick your topic. There's some SpaceX stuff to talk about. You could talk about that. But there's also the Red acquisition. That was a few weeks ago or something now. But I am interested in your quick take on that. I have heard the extended take. But what have you...
So the Red acquisition is kind of interesting. So what I'll bring up first, and that's this. So this is the actual court filings. So I'll give you a 60 second version of what this is. So what I'm showing here on the screen from line 13, this is Nikon's response. So essentially Red sued Nikon because Nikon were using raw recording internal to their camera, which was a Z9 mirrorless camera. And then as you can see here, Red came back at them and said, hey, we believe we're not in breach of any patent because you don't own a patent. So not only did they kind of say you don't own a patent, they said your patent's invalid. So here we have, it says here in April 2006, Red offered the Red camera incorporating the claimed invention, which was internal raw recording, compressed raw recording, which is patent 560 at NAB in Las Vegas. So Red showed off the camera in April 2006 and also offered it for sale with a $1,000 deposit at NAB at their booth. You could buy it. So not only did they show off the technology, talk about the technology, held a press conference, gave out information to the press about the camera, essentially did a full presser for the camera in April 2006. And then again, in November 2006, they actually did a public demonstration of the camera at a theater in Los Angeles, showing it recording so everyone could see it working. So all of these particular demonstrations they showed were long before December 28, 2007, which is the earliest possible effective date that 560 patent could be available. So they showed off before they patented it, which is a big no-no. You can't show off the technology and then say, I'm going to patent this now. So, which in effect, it was kind of interesting. This wasn't seen in the Sony case and it wasn't seen in the Kinefei case where they lost and Sony had to pay damages to Red for having internal raw recording in the F65 back in the day. So what happened was pretty much Nikon sent this is a 14-page brief, but it was the next part of the section that they would have been a bit scared with, just one sentence. Red's claim for relief are barred, so relief, which means we want money because you broke our patent, in whole or in part by the doctrine of unclean hands. What unclean hands means in law, a doctrine of unclean hands means you deliberately said you had a patent, you knew the patent was invalid, and yet you won a case, claimed money from that case, and tried to sue us again. So essentially what happened with that is Red went quiet. That's it. Their law team just shut their mouth. At the end of it all, what happened was Red, the entire company of Red was just given to Nikon. The only thing Nikon had to do, because Nikon wanted to own 100% of the company, they had to pay off Red's debts. So Red had $87 million in debts owed to creditors and all that kind of thing. So for Red not to share the company with creditors, which can happen sometimes with companies that go bankrupt, the company's divided amongst creditors. Nikon wanted to own 100% of Red so they can make 100% of the decisions and not have anyone talk about it. So Nikon simply paid the creditors off. So they paid $87 million, and in return, that was considered the sale of Red to Nikon, was simply Nikon paying off the creditors, essentially paying the debts of Red. So there was no more debts. No one was owed any money from Red, which meant Nikon owned 100% of the company. And that's it. And that's why we never heard anything about Red. And, you never heard anything about like how much it was sold for, because it didn't really get sold. Essentially, Nikon just paid off the debts and owns 100% of Red. Creditors can't claim anything to a court saying, hey, Red owes us money. They can't just be given to Nikon, which that's exactly right. So Nikon paid the debts, $87 million, and it was considered the bargain of the century, which it was. So Red's patents essentially were found to be moot, and therefore, rather than be sued out of existence by Sony, by Apple, by Kinefei, because they lost a case in the past of these patents, which now they could come back and sue Red for unclean hands, as you saw in that article, in that essentially it was a statement from Nikon to the court saying that Red had unclean hands. But so essentially that's it. So Red essentially no longer exists as a company outside of Nikon. Nikon has simply owned them clean, and all of Red's debts were settled by Nikon, so Nikon could claim 100% of the company. Now, since then, Nikon has done some firmware updates for the Red cameras, and they've announced a new lens mount. We don't know if they're replacing the RF mount, the Canon RF mount, to Red. They may offer both their Z mount and the RF mount from Canon, or they may just slightly discontinue the RF mount version of the Red cameras and just give the Z mount version of the cameras. They still have PL mounts, which is a very different kind of mount. Essentially, that's a mirrored mount. But yeah, so it's interesting that this has all happened. It's all very quiet. So anytime you ever hear any news about Red now, it's usually a firmware update or the Z mount add-on to the existing cameras. We haven't heard of any roadmap of new cameras. Nikon may not do a roadmap of cameras. They may simply just take the technology and put it into their existing roadmap of their cameras that they intend to do. And whether Nikon actually enters into that $30,000 plus cinema camera market, hard to say. I don't think they're going to sell it off. I think Sony would like to buy it from them, but Sony and Nikon are already partners in patents and in manufacturing already, so there's no real need for Sony to buy it from Nikon. Nikon could just have it as a feather in their cap, and just that's it. When they go to particular industry events, they can just walk around with this red feather in their cap, and everyone knows what it means. So, but yeah, it's a pretty straightforward story of Red's patents, all of Red's patents being just null and void. And because of that, they were in a bit of trouble because they were going to be sued out of existence from Sony, essentially. And so to stop that from happening, they gave themselves over to Nikon.
So what about Canon, or any of the camera manufacturers that weren't able to do RAW recording, right? That was.
So yeah. So as I said, Sony and Nikon already have a deal together because all the vast majority of Nikon sensors are manufactured by Sony. And so they already have a very close relationship. So, and essentially patents, there's kind of these kind of things with patents where you can have like a flat cost. So this is true for like modems in phones. So modems and phones have a flat cost for their patents. It's like $20 per device, and you can't charge more than that. So every device, the patent on that modem, if it's still under patent, is $20. No matter which phone manufacturer you are, charge $20. And it's kind of it's a kind of class of patent which just has like this base rate. And that may actually be the case that Nikon may just come out with a base rate for any camera manufacturer to use RAW recording. But the thing is, it doesn't matter because Red showed off the technology before the patent. No one can patent it now. So there is no patent. So that's the thing. There is no patent unless you come up with a different style, which Blackmagic have done, of course, because they do a slightly different way of doing RAW recording in their cameras. And Sony have done that, of course, with the Venice. They have a slightly different way to avoid the panels, the F65 that hit them hard. Canon don't have to worry about it. Canon is such a big company that no one's going to try and sue them out of existence. So Canon's had RAW recording since 2016 with the C700 and then the C200 and so on and so forth ever since. So they've had compressed RAW recording ever since. So, but I think that Sony's the one that are going to probably want to get this into their mirrorless cameras. As I said, the Z9 was the one that triggered this lawsuit from Nikon. Sony's mirrorless cameras, including like the FX3, FX6, don't have RAW recording internal. And I think that's something they will want to add. I don't think they can add it to those particular lines, just simply because of the hardware inside. But I think the next generation of Sony cameras to come out from their cinema line and maybe even their photography line, their hybrid cameras, they may go the same route that Canon has gone, of course. Canon has this already. They have RAW recording in their hybrid cameras and in their cinema cameras. So hopefully we'll see that from Sony as well. And it just means the market gets better. There's just more choices, better tools for everyone to use in the industry. That's really what it comes down to, is can we get the best tools for everyone to use?
Wow. All right. Well, there you go. There's the scoop. And it'll be, I think it'll make a great documentary at some point about how all that worked, how it all went down. Alexander, what do we have? We've got a question there.
Yeah, our first one is from Jeff Keithley in Texas. Anyone buy some new gear lately?
It wouldn't be office hours if we hadn't all bought some gear recently. Jeff, you going to kick it off? What have you got?
No, I was just asking. I mean, I'm always buying new gear. So this is nothing new to me. Let's see, what did I order? This week, actually, yesterday I ordered it. It'll be here Wednesday. some Icon fader controllers. So we're using them with the Llama Mix program. And so I ordered the new version of that and looking forward. I have one of the older versions. I don't know where it is. Somewhere. I don't know where it is. Usually it's in reach on my desk, but my desk is still out of pieces after being on the road for a while. But that's my latest acquisition, I think, because we're going to be doing some more development with the guys at Llama Mix, and looking forward to it.
Nice. Alexander, what have you got recently?
This mic, I don't have it plugged in at the moment, but everyone knows that I love microphones, and I came on office hours a couple of times this week with this brand new microphone from Warm Audio. It's the WA19, and this is as close as you're gonna get to a vintage AKG D19, which was famously used on many recordings. But if you ever watched the Beatles record at Abbey Road, you've seen Paul sing into this microphone. You've seen it used as a mono overhead microphone on Ringo's drums, and it's a really cool mic. It's really well built. I've never owned the original, but all I know is people that own the original say this is as close as you're gonna get without paying the big bucks for the vintage version. It has a mechanical high pass filter, and you just turn it. Basically, it's about 10 dB per octave down to 50 hertz. So it's got a flat grill here, end address, and that means you can put it right up to a guitar cab. I will test this on drums and guitars. I'm really excited to try it out. But $200 for this microphone. I mean, you can't go wrong. It's $200. So
Yeah, I was just looking at that, thinking, whether this was, what sort of price point it would be at, and that seems pretty reasonable, really, for what it does. Oh, you can get a black version as well. Looks cool.
Yeah, there's one other thing that I bought that hasn't shown up yet, but it will be this week. I ordered the Radial Catapult 4-channel Mini, which is basically just XLR to shielded Ethercon Cat network cable, so you can go pretty far. So I think that'll be a cool little utility thing to have in my case there.
Oh, Jeff's got some thoughts.
Why? Why would you just do Dante? I mean, and then it's digital, and then you don't have to worry about interference.
That's a good question. My particular setup here, it's a couple of things. I mainly plan on just using it as something that's if I take it to a gig and I need to run audio for whatever reason. I don't want to run long analog audio, but I think they're cheap, and I just felt like it's a cool product. I love radio, so I don't know. We'll see how much I actually use it. I do have a DM3 with Dante, and that's what I'm using. And I got my mic going into it, but everything else is Dante so far in my permanent installs. So I don't know. We'll see how much I actually practically use it.
I mean, at least it's a radio. Okay, so at least it's a radio. Yeah. All right, I give it that. But there's a lot of those out there on the Amazons, especially, and no. I tried one about 10 years
Canada,
ago.
Jeff, and I want to support the Canadian economy.
Okay, all right. Well, then the truth comes out.
That's right. Yeah, I saw. Actually, have you done the firmware upgrade on the DM3? I think I did. I haven't done it yet. So the auto mix is there now. Yeah.
It is, and I've used it already on a few recordings on a couple of podcasts, and it works exactly as you would expect auto mix to work. I was actually shocked that Yamaha added that. It would be nice if they added. There's still some shortcomings that are very frustrating on that console, like the fact that it only has one stereo matrix, which is incredibly limiting. There are no subgroups, no DCAs. I don't know if those will come in a future firmware upgrade. I mean, it's FPGA based, so hopefully they can just add those features with software. But I would love to see more flexibility there with the mix.
I think they're just pushing everybody in the DM7. They really, I mean, they've neutered the DM3 so much. To me, in my mind, I mean, even the TF has more features than the DM at this point, and the DM3s. And I was looking at it for this project that we're working on, and I was like, there's just no way we can make it fit in there. It doesn't have enough sliders, banks, or just channel inputs capable. And it seemed like they just missed a big market there, that mid market that's above the $2,000 range, but there's like nothing there. And you just got to jump all the way up to a DM7 at 15 grand. And that's a big jump.
Yeah. I think with like a podcast, you know, or a large podcast, it's perfect for that, you know, with some Dante going into some computers coming in, and, you know, like having 16 channels is great. And so, you know, for small events we're running on it, and it's fine. But yeah, I totally see the limitations.
Where's the QL1 replacement? That's what we're missing, is a QL1 replacement. Whether it's QL1 or QL3, either one of those, that frame, there's no replacement for that. Yeah, no. That was what I was hoping the DM3 would be.
Yeah, that's fair. Carl, what have you bought recently?
So the vast majority of things that I buy on a regular basis have to do with lighting or lighting accessories. So the last two things I kind of bought recently, one was a bunch, so 4 13-foot light stands. So 13-foot light stands are kind of cumbersome because essentially they don't pack down very small. They usually pack down to maybe like 1.5 meters. So they usually pack down to like 4 to 5 feet, which is quite unwieldy to move around. So I do have a set of 4 of them that pack down a little bit less than 4 feet, which means I can get them into a bag, squeeze 4 of them into a bag. But the whole point I do this is because I'm a photographer, I do flash. I put 4 flashes in the 4 top corners of a room. So if you look at a room and you look at the very top corners, like where the ceiling meets the walls for each of the corners, I put a flash up there and I run it at about quarter power when I'm going to run the flash on the camera. So what this does, no matter which way I'm pointed, the room's lit up. Because in a lot of these rooms where I do event photography, they like to have the lights down. So essentially you can take the photograph, but everything in the background will go to black. So that you have no context of what the room is and any of the decorations that have been put in the room, because they simply just bring the lights down for any decorations that someone's put a lot of time in. And the people who are paying me to take these photographs are usually the people who paid to have the decorations done as well. So they want to see the fruits of their labor. So essentially I put these 4 lights into the very far corners, and they're usually out of shot because they're in the, as I said, they're in the top of the very up right where the ceiling is, but they light up the room evenly. So they're all at the same power. And they're on manual, so I don't have to worry about them. And they simply trigger from anywhere I am in the room, and they just simply light up the room. So the lights that go up there are like 100 watt seconds, pretty much the same that's on the camera. But they'll just shoot all night. I never have to change the batteries because quarter power, and they have very large batteries. They'll last, 2,000 shots quite easily. So that's one thing. The other thing that I've gotten recently, I'll bring it up on screen here. Let me just get rid of that one. Is a ring flash. Now, this isn't a ring light, so some people will know of a ring light, of course, but this is a ring flash. So a ring flash is a little bit different. So the way a ring flash will work is that your camera will go through just like a camera, but it's usually very snug to the actual lens itself. It does have LEDs in there, and that's like a modeling light, the LEDs, but it's not to light us. But essentially what it does is you can see that it will light up the subject. And I have all the accessories for it too. So all the accessories you'll see with the ring flash here. You can have an off-camera flash like that, like a normal off-camera. But what it does is essentially it fills in the shadows. And this is essentially what a ring flash is. And this is a good example here. We have a flash to the side, and that's actually a ring flash shooting into an umbrella. But you can actually have 2 flashes. So you'll have one ring flash on the camera itself. This is how the ring flash goes, and it's the bag it comes in. But it can essentially light up. So this top right-hand corner photo here, this is kind of what a ring flash would look like. But other shots, one on the left here, all it's doing is filling in the shadows. So you could actually have the sun as your main light, or here you could have the off light. But essentially, the ring flash will just fill in the shadows. So all it's doing is lowering the contrast on the subject. So, and getting the right balance. And it's actually a balance you need to get correct. So you're using natural light and the ring flash, and they work together. You can do the effect where you have a ring flash look, which, as I said, that's more like this photo here up on the top right. So that's more of a ring flash look. And in the kit, you get the ring flash itself, you get essentially grids, you get the reflector, you get the grids for the flash itself, you get grids for the reflector itself, you get color. So the color here is so you can actually match the lighting you're in. So if you have to do ring flash inside of a place that has warm lighting, so that warm lighting will cause, your flash is going to be about 6,000 Kelvin, roughly, let's say. So if you're in a place that has 3,200 and you can't change that, you're in a place that has 3,200, you're doing portraits inside of a library, and the person wants the library to show up in the background of their photographs. So because that library's being lit by 3200 Kelvin lights, you have to change the ring flash light, and the way you do that is by put gels on it. So that's what the gels are here for. You'll see in the shot. Those gels will go in front of the ring flash and change the color of the ring flash to match the color of wherever you're working. So, but ring flashes, you can use it for like fashion photography. Did it for a while in the 60s, and then again in the 80s it became popular in fashion. But generally what it is so it's not seen. You won't generally see, it'll be a dot in the eye, so it's not going to be this big circle, because it is as small as it possibly can be around the flashes, around the lens itself. So from a distance, it'll look like just a dot, a highlight in the eye. But generally it's used for sun. So if you have someone's got hard sun on their face for fashion photography, you want to control how dark the shadows are. The way to control how dark the shadows are is with a ring flash. So the ring flash isn't the main light. The sun is going to be the main light. The ring flash just allows you to change how dark are the shadows on the subject. And so it's used quite a lot in fashion photography, because fashion have hard light. Hard light shows garments at their best. Soft light is usually not so good for garments because it makes them look flat and unfeatured. So, but yeah, so because I do a lot of portrait work, the ring flash is actually becoming quite handy in the last few weeks that I've done a few portraits, because it's been very sunny. We're in the middle of summer here. So now I feel very confident to use the sun and not have to worry about having two shadows. So the other way, if you don't do this, you have to have two shadows. You're going to have your sun, and then you're going to have another faint shadow, because you're trying to fill the light from an umbrella that may be close to the camera, but it's not exactly the camera. So the nose can cast two shadows. With a ring flash, it's shadowless for the fill light. But the main light, you'll still have a very hard shadow from the sun, and you're looking at the photograph, you'll see the shadow from the sun, so your brain goes, okay, there's the main light source. But what you don't notice is that the shadow is less dark than it would have been if I didn't have the ring flash. So ring flash, pretty cool.
Very cool.
Carl wins. That's it. I'm going home.
Yeah, that's
Carl
right,
wins. That is awesome. I never would have
cool.
thought about that. That is a really neat piece of gear.
Yeah.
It's relatively cheap too, considering the bang for the buck. Yeah, so it is a pretty cool, if you're into photography, you're into portraits, if you're into kind of fashion style location portraits where you have to deal with hard shadows. Because like go out with your phone right now and do a shot in broad daylight where the sun is hitting someone's face and take the photograph, you'll notice that the shadows are really dark of the part that's not lit. And you can bounce, there's heaps of things you can do. But if you want to be really fast and you want to fill in those shadows and you want to get it perfect, because bouncing, the problem with bouncing is you have to move that bounce card further back, and then you have to have a third person there, of course, to do that. Or you have to have it on the stand, and it slows stuff down. With the ring flash, you can change the power really quickly. You take a photograph, look at it, see the contrast, and then you come back and go, no, add an extra stop, less stop, but you kind of get used to it. So you can work really fast with a model in broad sunlight. Sometimes in public places where you don't have a lot of time, because some security guy's going to shoot you away pretty quickly. So that's another thing you want to keep the thing. And also, if you want to look professional, come out with a camera with a ring flash on it, and people go, that's professional.
I was going to say that too. Yeah, it does look legit.
So how much?
Yeah.
So the ring flash, the kit that I showed you here. So this kit was, for me, I believe 700 Australian, about 500 US. The only thing it doesn't come with is the actual power pack. So the power pack is around another $500. So it'd be $1,000 all up. So the power pack is the AD200, which comes with different heads, but essentially this is really just a head, and it attaches. So if we scroll back up, you can see that there's a little shoulder bag. That shoulder bag is what actually, if we scroll back up to someone using it, not that one. So you'll see the shoulder bag or the shoulder bag on the light stand there. And that shoulder bag on the light stand will kind of show you that it actually hooks into the power pack. Power pack will last probably 500 shots at full power. You're never going to run this at full power unless you're a long distance away from the person. But yeah, so you'll see there's a cable, and there's the actual, the power pack. Essentially, it's not just a battery, it is the actual flash itself. And this is really just the flash tube. That's a better way of saying it. This is the flash tube, and this is the flash electronics and the battery all in one. But it works with another light, so you don't need to worry about thinking about this is only dedicated for that. There are dedicated ring flashes that only works with ring flash, but this is part of the AD200 light series. So the AD200 light series is probably one of the biggest light series in the world as far as how many photographers own one. Number one for weddings. But yeah, so here on there's a pack there, so you can actually see that's the actual flash pack itself with the battery inside of it, all the control electronics, and there's one cable that runs off. It's about 2 meter cable. About 2 meters, about 6 feet or so. And the fact that it lets you run and gun and allows you to attach to any camera, so it works with any camera, any lens pretty much. There aren't too many lenses that won't fit into it, and yeah, but it's a very versatile flash for a lot of essentially a lot of people photography. Also, a lot of product photography. We use ring flash as well. So things that I know that I use a lot of ring flashes, like people who photograph Harley Davidsons, swear by ring flashes because the Harley Davidson will usually be in direct sunlight. For some reason, people like Harleys in direct sunlight, but they want the glint. And with a ring flash, you get a glint directly back at the camera as well. So it's not really to fill in the shadows, which it can fill in the shadows because Harley Davidson will have a lot of crevices, a lot of shadows. It's to fill in those shadows, but it's also to get that extra glint off the chrome of motorcycles. So it's quite popular in that genre as well.
Very cool. Do you know, I think there's only one thing better than buying new gear, and that is getting a whole new feature on gear that you already own. And so where I've experienced that this week is I've got a Blackmagic, I guess it's a 1ME control surface back there. And this week I just started playing around and getting the PTZ control working off of that, which is
it's pretty
super cool. Oh, look at Jeff. Listen,
so we
Just
switch
stay,
$0.
stay in your lane. Stay in your lane, boys. Stay in your lane.
listen, dude. Listen, for $0, I've now got an actually really good joystick. You know, for twist zoom and moving around, right? Like it's a good.
Oh, what cameras? What cameras are you using with it? Which
little
cameras?
bird dogs, like the new little X1s or whatever they are. X1s,
Right.
Z1s.
I was wondering what it looks like on like a UE 150 or something like that. If it actually really has, you know, the resolution and everything to handle the better motors.
Yeah, well, and that's a good question. I put it on that bird dog there, which is a P200, and I was able to go really slow, and both in zoom and also in the movement, and you know, diagonal moves and things like that. The sort of stuff that I was testing out. The point is, the thing was that that's never been a thing. Like the PTZ control was added, or was it 6 months ago or something, but I didn't know exactly how you can use it if you don't have a control surface, and I'm still not sure if you can use it on an ATEM switcher without a control surface. But anyway, it was as simple as soon as I got it connected, I could start moving the camera around. So now I've got to work on switching cameras. It's not immediately obvious how you there's you know, one of the pots you can change, but you actually need hot switching. You know, you'll be able to smash the switches to be able to go straight to it. And it could be that it's a combination of a Stream Deck or something that you're able to change that. It does have a monitor out as well, so you can take up one of the auxiliary outs, which would be similar to like a CCU, where you can, you know, whichever one you're now currently on is what's going to go out that output. So it's just for $0.
Which ATEM switcher were you using
pretty good.
as the in between?
That was in a 2ME, 2ME switcher. So, yeah,
Constellation.
and it'll go on a Constellation. It'll go on the Constellation.
Were you doing PTZ
not
over
called
SDI or
Constellation,
PTZ over serial?
It's Visco over IP, right? I think that's
So that's the new one they added. They've always had, so the 4MEs, so any ATEM that does MADI also has a remote output, which is an RJ11 jack, and they've had that for years. So the control surfaces have always had PTZ. It's only the IP version now that they added, as you said, 6 months ago. So so they've added another flavor now of Visco over IP. They've always had Visco over serial, which was RJ11, but that was for the 4ME switches only.
Oh, there you go.
I just find it really interesting that NewTek had PTZ control like 10 plus years ago through their control surfaces. That's interesting, isn't it?
Is it? That's interesting. And could you do it on the joystick of the control surface? Yeah.
Yep.
Well, how long is the 8K? Because the 8K Constellation was the first Constellation to do it. So I don't know how long that's been out for now, but That's how long Blackmagic's been able to do it for.
Well, yeah, you could do it. There was also an Arduino suggestion.
Arduino Shield.
Blackmagic.
Arduino Shield,
Yeah,
yeah.
you could put a shield and make it all work and do it that way, which seemed like a very hacky way of trying to make that work.
I think it's great that they caught up. It's awesome.
Very good. All right, next question, Alexander.
Guy Cochran in Seattle, Washington is asking, what kind of drone was feeding the race, Jeff, and how was the in-car footage transmitted?
If you ask anybody else, it was completely magic and ether. I mean, it was really it was amazing that any of them got on the air. And it really was. Okay, so we had first off, they didn't tell my client that they had a whole lot of live view. They said, "Oh, we have some live views in some of the cars, so you'll need to ingest those." Then they sent my client 3 LU4000 servers, so that's 12 channels of live views. And the whole system is based off of TriCaster TC2, so there's plenty of inputs there because you're using NDI, which doesn't tie you, to the SDI limitations. And so we took that in. That was one thing he was worried about, is because he didn't know that the live views could do NDI. And I was like, yeah, of course I can. Give me a minute. And so I started updating them, and that was the better part of 2 of my first days there, was updating the live views. I had to bring one down to bare metal and update it. This is the servers. And then they had these 12 allegedly. I say allegedly because I never saw more than like 3 or 4 online at any given time. So apparently they had some on some cars, and that was LU300s. And so I could see them when they came online in LU Central, and then I could map them to an appropriate output on the LU4000 servers. And that's how we brought the Trans Am series in. The other series,
what sort of latency?
I pushed them down because of course it is cellular. So it was I pushed them down to like 1.5 seconds. I could go down to 1.2, but I gave it a little bit extra buffer because the cell service, it was in Sebring, Florida. It's not a lot of cell. It's not a big town.
Right.
So there wasn't a whole lot of cellular there. And we would get breakups, but I think people they love the end car. And it also actually had a graphic support out of the little camera they're using. I forget the name, Z something or something or another. It's not a Z cam, but it's something. It's targeted at racing. And so they have built-in telemetry in there, so you can see where the foot pedal was at. So you can see the brake, you can see the gas, you can see the speed, you can see RPMs, and there's 2 or 3 other. Oh, and you can see a virtual steering wheel, so it actually caught the steering wheel telemetry too. It really was. I mean, it wasn't just the camera.
That was overlaying over the in-car.
That was in our source already. Yeah, that was in our source already, coming from the camera. So the camera in the car was generating that. It's just a straight HDMI out into the live view, and then live view up to the air, and then came back to it. So that's what we did on the big ones.
Beautifully, like all of that.
Yeah, really look good.
That would look
it
great.
Really 1 to 2 seconds in this type of racing. Sebring's a big road race, so it's not, you're really not seeing from one turn to the next turn. You're hopping along quite long distances. So we were cutting in and out against our hard cameras that were wired in, which we had 12 hard cameras also. So with all that, it was actually pretty seamless, and people are kind of got used to it. It's like, it glitched out a little bit. Oh, it's okay now. They weren't like freaking out. It's like, oh my gosh, it's not broadcast quality or whatever. They're just happy to see it. And it is such a unique view to be able to see those on camera. It's like one of them were like, hey, where's I can't remember his name, Dottie. Where's Dottie's camera at? I was like, I don't know, he's off air. Like, oh, here it is. Oh, it's on fire. Sorry. Yeah, exactly. So we were shooting, you're seeing through the windshield. Yeah, he's crashed into the wall. It's on fire. We're seeing fire, and then the guy's extinguishing it out. It was a cool experience seeing, that unfold in real time at that point in time. But it made some great highlight reels.
Save the live view. Save the live view.
Oh, there was actually one really really bad fire. I mean, it burnt the car almost to the ground. There was just pieces left and frames and all that. But the guy got out, but it just like it went up fast, and it was on one of the Porsche Cups, the Cup cars. But so that was then the Porsche. So this was on the Trans Am series. So they had their own series, their own section of the race through the weekend. But the other one was the Cup Series. And so the Cup Series were the Porsches, 992s, 993s. Those were more, I say, not part-time, but somewhat part-time racers. But we had a couple guys that came in and they're like, I was given this and they said you could make it work. And so I looked at my client and goes, it's all you, man. So it was live view solos. And they would have a live view solo with some of them had a puck, some of them had antennas on or little small modems on it. So you could do two with the Solo Pros, you could do two modems and then bond it together. So that's what we were trying to do. And they had to buy LRT. And I was like, well, you need LRT. You don't have an LRT subscription. After I logged into their information, they're like, here's my credit card. Just put it on there. It was just really it was kind of comical at times, and they were just like, is this gonna work? I'm like, I don't know. I have no idea. But they just wanted to see it, and they were like so happy that they could have it. And there was like four racers that did that. And so what we did is we took that, and with LRT off the live view solo, it hits a virtual server and then turns it back. You could flip it into SRT. And so that's what we did, is we ingested it as SRT. All that said and done, latency was actually better on those than it was on the LU packs, the LU 300 packs. Yeah, whenever I could get it. And one of those was like, it was nice. They had a dual camera display on theirs. And so you could see not only the hood view going out, but they had one down with like NASCAR does, where you can see his feet actually moving and stuff. Yeah.
Wow.
So, and drones. We had two drones, which was really cool. There is the guys that all they do is drones, and this guy had one of the FPVs. So he did these really cool like sweeps. I could go over the top of as the racers were coming around to head out. He would sweep back behind them and catch up on them, and then the cars would pull away. And it was, I mean, and there was like a gantry going across, and he would duck underneath it at the same. I mean, it was some really cool flying. And there's a couple times I'm like, "Arr!" And then he would just pop up and he'd be fine. But because it was FPV, he could fly a lot faster, but it wasn't really super great quality, but it was good quality. And then he had a Mavic Pro that he threw up to do more cinematic style shots and some things. And like some of the races and stuff, in the races where they had crashes, it was his job to find the crash. And he's like, okay, turn 13, go. Wow. And he would just go out there and just do a hover around them. And they were really, really receptive to that. I mean, they let the drone go a lot of places that normally you wouldn't think anybody would go. Yeah. So it was quite fun.
And they just give you another remote essentially that has HDMI out. Is that?
Well, their controllers, their actual control surfaces for the DJIs have HDMI out, and so we took that HDMI and then we went into what's called a NDI converter, and then we went into over NDI, which is not SDI. So we went over NDI back to the NDI into the TriCaster, and it worked really well.
I'd like to hear more about how this NDI is not SDI. That's interesting.
That's right. I was going to ask if it was a TriCaster that you were using. Which TriCaster now are you
TC2 Elite
on-site?
Yeah, TC2 Elite. So in total channel count, we had 12 hard cameras. Well, we would consider them hard cameras, but there were there's 8 SDI inputs going into the TriCaster, and there were 4 that were true hard cameras that were SMT chains, 2 robotic heads, which is the first time I've ever used them. They are the Air. So it's a new company on the block, probably around about $8,000 or $9,000 kit. Uses Zcam actually as the little box camera on it. But what's really cool about it is not only you get the pan and the tilt, is it actually can do this. So you can actually rotate the head. You can get roll. So your horizon's always right. And that is something in my big heads I can't do without spending even more money. So I'm not going to do that. And then so that was somewhere around 12 count is where we ended up with stopping with the regular cameras and some fixed cameras and things like that. And then we went into the cars, and so we had 12 channels in the cars, 8 channels of replay, and then that was 8 channels recording and replay, and then 2 coming back into the switcher for playback. So that was kind of the count.
So you had 4 camera operators on track, is that right?
Yeah, there were well, technically 4 on track. 1 robot operator was handling, and he was actually doing a pretty good job at keeping up with the cars, because if you get far enough back, you can zoom in and you could track a car, even at these things doing 120, 130 miles an hour across a straightaway. That was not hard at all to track it. A lot of people think you can't track moving things with PTZs, but if you're a good operator, you can. Just got to know your focals. Yeah, but that was pretty much it on the wireless stuff. But that was and then we did have a wireless 5th camera that was a wireless handheld, and so he did like the pit cams and just kind of chased around people, and that was on a CX 400. 4000, yeah, CX 4000. What I sold him was the UC 4000s, the big SMPTE cameras, and then he had the ENG version of that, which is a CX version, and it turned out pretty well. DJI wireless on it also worked really well. That has got to be my favorite wireless. I mean, it just works, just goes forever.
Right, makes sense. You're doing it with the drone as well. You'd like,
yeah,
the same system.
Exactly. Yeah, it's effectively exactly the same system. I think next time we're already planning is to have a few more receivers up, just so that we have a little bit more coverage, just to keep from having to pull some extra fiber. Overall, we used the in-house fiber that was on the grounds, and there was miles of that. But overall, we laid down over 15,000 or 16,000 feet of fiber. I can't remember the last count. It was a lot of fiber. It was all like TAC 12 and TAC 24. It was a lot of fiber.
That's
but
cool.
3.5 mile track, you got to do something to get around it.
Yeah, we're just talking about like the rolling of the camera, which reminded me of this, which is the camera movements: dolly, boom, truck, pan, tilt, roll.
Pan.
Yeah, which is what
you just pan the camera up, you just
which
pan
is
the camera
what the
across.
client, yeah, that's right. Which is what the client will say. It's a pan. Just whichever way it needs.
You just
to go.
pan the camera so the logo's straight.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, yeah, always like that. All right. Well, I'm interested. 2 things I want to do. We want to do some content recommendations. So we have to have a little think about that. It could be a movie, a video, YouTube channel or something. But Jeff, I wanted to ask you about what makes it tick. And you've got. Are you on again tomorrow?
Yes, we are. We are going to do it again tomorrow. We're going to do it at 5 o'clock Texas time, because everything in the world just basically goes around Texas, so everything works like that. So 5 o'clock Texas time, and last week we had a really great one on fiber. So it's posted on the YouTubes. It's what's making it tick on the YouTube, and you'll see a big W. I don't have a good logo, but I'm working on that. But the fiber one was really good. Yeah, we learned a lot together on that, and that's the idea. It's the same thing as here. Is we were just trying to learn together, and we've got some pretty big heavy hitters that have been in the broadcast industry for quite a while. So it's nice to be able to share some of that information and pick their brain a little bit. I don't have a topic for tomorrow though, but I plan on. Well, I usually don't.
You could probably talk through the race and what you set up there. It's probably
well, we talked a little bit about it last time, but I very much we can fill up an hour or 2 or 3. There's a lot of things, and that's we're also kind of doing that behind the scenes when we are doing some shows, like we did the curling event, and we did like a breakdown of the behind the scenes, which everybody it's just a way of learning, and that's what we're trying to do, is just bring people up, raise people up and help them learn a little bit about what's done in the right now. It's a live sports. Who knows? It could be sometimes it's live virtual events. Yeah. So it just depends. Just another day ending in Y.
That's right. Absolutely. All right. Carl, what's your content recommendation?
My content recommendation is from the 90s this time. So it's a documentary series. Technically, it was when it went to air back in 1995. It was 3 episodes. It was a must-see TV. This is, of course, before streaming, so all television was linear back then, so you had no choice. And it went over 3 nights. On the first 2 nights, there were 2 new pieces of material that the world got to see. And so this is the Beatles anthology. So this was a documentary made by the Beatles, by Paul, George, and Ringo. George passed away in 2001, so it was about 6 years before this was made. 6 years after this was made. So this is pretty much their own story. And they do have a lot of Yoko in here. There's a lot of Julian in here as well. So there is a lot of John is represented in this documentary. But this was the Beatles documentary made in the 90s, and it coincided with them releasing 2 songs. It was 3 episodes. They were meant to have 3 songs, but that 3rd song was released a couple of years ago, called Now and Then. They didn't have the technology back then to separate John's vocal from his piano. So essentially, John had a microphone. He was sitting at his piano, and this is essentially a demo. So John was making this demo in the early 70s. He had a microphone at his mouth, but he's playing the piano at the same time, and the piano is being picked up. But it's a bit roomy. So it's not a very good sounding piano, but his vocal's okay. And so they did actually record it back in 1994 and 1995 to be the 3rd song that went along with this documentary series. The documentary series is 8 episodes. But as I said, they edited it down to 3 episodes for TV. So it's much, much longer if you get the DVD, or if you go onto eBay and you can find the collector's edition VHS. But yeah, so essentially what happened with the 3rd song called Now and Then, which was, people may remember, was released probably about 18 months ago, I guess. What happened was they took the demo recording from John Lennon, and using artificial intelligence that Peter Jackson from Lord of the Rings created for the Get Back documentary, which was the ability to actually separate the instruments in the track. So they're not adding anything. There's no additive. There's nothing created by AI, but essentially it's an algorithm or AI that's able to go, okay, this is vocals, this is piano, separate them for me. So give me just the vocals by itself and just the piano by itself. And so that's exactly what they did. And because George had recorded his parts back in 1994, I believe it was, before he passed away, for this song, but they never released a song because they can never get John's vocal to sound good. And they didn't want to replace John's vocal with one of their own. So they kind of said, okay, this one has to go on the wayside. So only 2 songs, which was Free as a Bird and Real Love, they came out, but the 3rd one never came out. Until, as I said, Peter Jackson said, we can do this now. And so the team at Abbey Road, Giles Martin, so the son of George Martin, who was their producer for all their years at Abbey Road, he actually came down and he said, okay, we can use this technology developed by the people who helped, it was actually commissioned by people who made the Get Back documentary, which included Peter Jackson. And so they separated Paul's vocal, John's vocal away from his piano, and then Paul played a new version of the piano. So the piano you're hearing is essentially Paul playing it, and then the vocal is all John. So essentially all they did was they just separated John's vocal, and that's it. They didn't add anything. They didn't really, probably added a little bit of reverb. They didn't need too much reverb because he was in a pretty reverby room when he recorded it. But that's it. That's all they did. And then, of course, they used George Harrison's music that he recorded back in 1994 to add onto the track. And then Paul and Ringo added stuff to what they already recorded back in the 90s. And so we have a new song. And that's how that new song came out 80 months ago. But you can actually see them actually recording. So the interesting thing about the documentary is you can actually see a little bit of behind the scenes of them recording that. But you don't know what they're recording because we never heard it before. But now if you watch this carefully, the DVD splits it across 5 episodes, and there is a special features, 4 discs, but it kind of comes up in 5 episodes because of the special features. You can find this on eBay. I don't think it's sold anymore. There is no Blu-ray version of this. There wouldn't be essentially a Blu-ray version of this. The documentary was shot on film though, so they could in theory go back and scan the film and make a high resolution version, but that's up to, they probably will do it, but that's up to Paul McCartney and Ringo if they want to do that. But
found
yeah,
it.
it's a very good, something really good you can put on in the background as well while you're doing housework, because half of it is them talking and the other half of it is Beatles songs. So
Just music,
it's,
yeah.
it's half music, half of them talking.
I found all 8 episodes on archive.org.
Cool.
Yeah. So they're
Nice
all
240 resolution. That's nice.
possibly, yeah, that's right. Be low res. It looks all right. So that's cool. That's a good one. Nice one. Jeff, what have you got?
Mine is more typical. I didn't go artsy or anything like that. This is Netflix finest.
Mm-hmm.
0 Day
Yeah.
with Robert De Niro.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't have high expectations, but I was sat there with my wife late night, Saturday night, polished off 4 episodes, and then Sunday afternoon or evening, I forget where it was, we polished off the last 2. I was just like, it was just entertainment and somewhat relevant in these times. But yeah, the story of, the typical story of we're going to shut down the grid and the world's going to come to an end, that kind of thing. And they did it for 1 minute. And then later, they figured out why and who and all that stuff. So not a bad show.
Yep, I agree. Back that up. Alexander.
Yeah, I'm going to recommend a movie on physical media, and this is released by Arrow, and it's a fantastic movie. This is the 1948 crime noir The Big Clock, which is based on a crime novel written by Kenneth Fearing, starring Ray Milland and Charles Laughton, 2 famous actors from that era. So anyways, if you're really into that style of story, and it's just a beautiful looking movie as well in black and white.
Very nice. Gee, we've got some diverse recommendations this time. I'm still trying to finish off the Oscar nominees, and so I'm like halfway through The Brutalist, which I really enjoyed, am enjoying. So that was quite a good one. But one of my favourites in that whole thing was the September 5, the broadcast. I mentioned it before, but that's worth seeing. The first Olympics live broadcast. So that's a particularly cool one. We should somehow do a watch party where we can all watch that together, because it's particularly broadcast geeky, that movie, and it just happens that it had Oscar nominations as well. So, and I haven't watched the Oscars yet either, which I've got that ready to watch too. So I tend to prefer to just watch it in one sitting rather than have it on, because it's on during the day for us. So I'd rather watch it at night. So that's what I'll be doing in the next couple of days. Anyway, thank you everyone. Thank you to, I think we had as many people working behind the scenes as we have on the show, which is cool. Maybe as many people as watching the show this week. But we had Taylor, Peter, Robert, and Alan S and Alan M, that were both messing around with the Viz Vector, switching the show. And we had some comments about some audio dropping in and out perhaps, or something, and you know what, that's all part of this. Like the back end production doesn't actually just support the content. The content is also supporting the learning of the production, right? And that's the purpose of what we're doing here. So by doing it every week, everyone gets to play around a little bit. It's a real show, and you never learn as much as when you are actually in show mode. And so that's why we do it. So anyway, thank you, panelists. Thanks for coming along. And you can catch us again next week, Monday, at 6. It is, isn't it? 6 p.m. Pacific. And then, of course, every day at 7 a.m. Pacific, you can jump on and ask any of your production media creation questions. And so I hope you enjoy that. Thanks, everyone. Bye bye.